In Peru, relatives of the 13 miners that were murdered in the FTS province demanded justice for their loved ones in view of the government's inaction. The Vatican authorities are finalizing preparations for the celebration of the conclave in the Sistine Chapel, where the 133 cardinals will gather to elect the new pontiff on May 7th. And the United Nations, Palestinian and international organizations rejected Israeli plan of action towards Gaza, which intends to only allow humanitarian aid access in militarized zones. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. We now begin with the information. In Peru, relatives of the 13 miners that were murdered in the FTS province demanded justice for their loved ones in view of the government's inaction. Victims reportedly worked for a contractor of La Poderosa Gold Mining Corporation. In late April, the relatives reported that they had been kidnapped by criminal groups linked to illegal mining. Likewise, their families highlighted the police ignored their warnings and a video of their executions. Meanwhile, local media unfolded their co-workers found on Sunday their bodies. In this regard, the Peruvian Congress urged the executive branch to respond firmly and take immediate actions against the organized crime. In Haiti, dozens of demonstrators held a rally in the hills of the capital demanding an end to violence and the resignation of the country's prime minister and the Presidential Transitional Council. This latest rally comes one day after hundreds of Haitians gathered in the capital, Port-au-Prince, to honor community leaders killed during clashes with criminal groups. The protesters denounced that the growing humanitarian crisis in the country has left 1,600 dead and more than 500 wounded from January to March alone. The Haitian National Police has had difficulties in its fight against criminals due to the insufficient number of police personnel and funds from the mission supported by the United Nations. El Faro News website announced that the Salvadoran prosecutor's office seeks to issue arrest warrants against its journalists after revealing links between the government and criminal groups. The chair of the media outlet, Carlos Dada, advanced that the prosecutor's office is taking the aforesaid actions after having interviewed two heads of criminal groups, including Carlos Cartagena, aka Charlie. Dada further provided details of the political strategy between President Bukele and criminal groups at the outset of his candidacy for mayor of San Salvador by 2014. Both Charlie and the criminal Lido man indicated that these groups threatened several communities to force them to vote for Bukele. Obviously, the government denied all testimonies and allegations. And in Brazil, the police arrested two people suspected of planning an attack on the concert of U.S. singer Lady Gaga in Rio de Janeiro. The suspected, including teenagers, are linked to an organization that spread hatred against the LGBTQI+ community, the singer's main audience in the event. The group intended to generate chaos by using homemade bombs and Molotov cocktails at Lady Gaga's concert in Copacabana, which gathered around 2.1 million attendees. The free show was held under a heavy security operation with more than 5,000 police officers deployed. Thus, it was considered a success as no serious incidents were recorded. And along the Colombia-Panama border, the jungles and native peoples of the Darien Gap region face an environmental crisis. In 2021, the region became the epicenter of an unprecedented migratory crisis with 1.2 million vulnerable people crossing. While this flow of people has virtually disappeared, The region now faces unforeseen environmental consequences. Authorities estimate 2,500 tons of garbage have been accumulated in the Darien Gap and that it will cost around $12 million just to clean it up. Meanwhile, criminal groups have exploited their control of the migratory routes to carry out illegal gold mining, logging, and coca production in the dense jungle.
We
don't bathe there anymore. When you bathe there, you get itchy rashes. And for the children, it's even more dangerous for them. Why? Because the water is polluted. There is a lot of garbage.
Culturally, fishing is our way of life. And now, when we go fishing, we are practically eating fish full of gasoline, and that affects our health.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Vatican authorities are finalizing preparations for the celebration of the conclave in the Sistine Chapel, where 133 cardinals will gather to elect a new pontiff on May 7th. The Holy See has announced that 2 bonfires and a chimney have been set up to the site to emit the white smoke that signals the appointment of the successor of the late Pope Francis. Until an agreement is reached, the black smoke will continue to be emitted. The test will consist on 4 daily votes, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. If necessary, a direct and obligatory second ballot will be held between the 2 cardinals who received the most votes in the previous ballot. In all cases, a 2/3 majority will be required.
What I'm doing is looking, listening, seeing people coming from Mongolia, working in the Curia, who are with the poorest people in Latin America, in Africa. This is very beautiful. It's a richness, and for this I think it does us all good, believers and non-believers. This I think is also the legacy of 2,000 years of ecclesial life, and also the legacy of Pope Francis.
Everyone is among us. I don't know who it is, he doesn't know himself, but there's the future Pope, and he will hear all of this. And it's from this richness that he will nourish himself, and I hope that afterwards we will be able to be for him a true college of brother cardinals.
On Monday, during his state visit to Russia, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel laid a wreath at the Motherland Monument at the Piskarovskoye Cemetery in the city of St. Petersburg. This cemetery contains a total of 186 mass graves, where the bodies of 420,000 inhabitants of the former Leningrad are buried, as well as 70,000 soldiers who defended the city. The Cuban president arrived in Russia on Sunday to take part in the events dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the victory over Nazism in the Second World War. Díaz-Canel was received upon his arrival in St. Petersburg by Governor of the city, Alexander Beglov, with whom he will share an intense agenda that includes visits to important scientific centers. Also in Russia, the Ministry of Emergencies is investigating an explosion followed by a fire that killed 2 people and left about 13 others injured, some of whom were hospitalized. According to local media, the numbers of victims would include several minors. Regarding the incident, it was estimated that it could have been caused by a domestic gas blast. The deflagration caused fire in 2 apartments and the collapse of a section of the building between the 8th and 9th floors. The fire department reported that residents were evacuated to temporary housing centers, and the public prosecutor's office and the investigation committee announced that they had opened a file to determine the cause of the fire. In Germany, the conservative-led coalition signed on Monday a governing agreement ahead of the start of new Chancellor Friedrich Merz's term in office. This way, Merz's party, the Conservative Christian Democratic Union, signed a 144-page deal with the Christian Social Union and the center-left Social Democrats. The agreement, announced on April 9th after a round of coalition talks, paves the way for the swearing-in of the new government on Tuesday, May 6th. The coalition is set to further far-right alternative for Germany party from governing in a context where the opposition bloc is filing a lawsuit against the German intelligence agency after being labeled as extreme right-wing. In the United States, candidates aligned with Donald Trump and the extreme right suffered a heavy defeat in local elections in Texas. Last Saturday, May 3rd, the municipal elections were held in the state of Texas for the purpose of electing city councilmen, school board members, and other local representatives. Elected officials play a crucial role in addressing local needs, from education to public safety to community development. In this context, voters statewide decisively rejected extremist candidates and elected leaders who prioritize public education, inclusion, and pragmatic governance over culture wars and partisan agendas. Also in the U.S., President Donald Trump announced in an interview his intention to negotiate with China, but without contemplating the idea of tariff reductions just yet. The U.S. head of state admits the impact of his tariff war, but says he will not give in until achieving an agreement that benefits the United States. Following that line, Trump refused China's demand for tariff reduction to end a trade war, although he did not rule out lowering tariffs only if it benefits U.S. companies and businesses. For his part, Chinese President Xi Jinping left the door open with the United States, but insisted that any agreement must be on equal terms. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump also ordered the expansion and reopening of the Alcatraz maximum security prison, where he intends to hold the country's most violent prisoners. On a post on his Truth Social profile, the head of state announced that he has ordered the Federal Bureau of Prisons, in collaboration with the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, to reopen the Alcatraz high-security prison that was closed over 60 years ago, which is located on Alcatraz Island off the coast of San Francisco, California. Trump also suggested that undocumented immigrants could be sent there.
Where did you get the idea for reopening Alcatraz?
Just an idea I've had, and I guess because the judges, so many of these radicalized judges, they want to have trials for every single, think of it, every single person that's in our country illegally, that came in illegally. That would mean millions of trials, and it's just so ridiculous what's happening. And it's long been a symbol, Alcatraz, of whatever it is. I mean, you know, it's a sad symbol, but it's a symbol of law and order. And, you know, it's got quite a history, frankly. So I think we're going to do that, and we're looking at it right now.
We have a second short break coming up, but before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. The Israeli government has unveiled a plan to expand its military operations in Gaza in the coming weeks, taking over aid deliveries to the devastated Palestinian enclave. The plan, which was approved at a security, furthers the Zionist regime's genocidal operation in the enclave. Reportedly, the proposal would involve an offensive to move the Gaza population south. In addition, the plan proposes the military be in charge of administering food and other vital supplies to the 2.3 million people suffering under its siege of the Palestinian territory. Israel renewed its bombardment of Gaza after breaking a short-lived ceasefire, with troops reinforcing kilometer-deep buffer zones along the perimeter and blocking the entry of humanitarian aid and food to the Strip. Also in this context, the United Nations, together with Palestinian and international organizations, rejected the Israeli plan of action, which they asserted would prevent the most vulnerable from getting the needed aid. Through a statement, the entities noted that much of Gaza would remain without supplies in violation of the humanitarian principles of humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. It further added that Israel's intention was to tighten up control over basic needs as a pressure tactic or as part of a military strategy. The Netanyahu administration has maintained a full siege on the Palestinian enclave for 64 days, subjecting the population to starvation. Yemeni authorities announced a new U.S. and U.K. aggression in which at least 15 civilians were killed in the city of Sana'a. The airstrike hit a densely populated area in the Shub district east of the capital. The health ministry added that one person was also wounded after a bombing north of Sana'a. During the same day, the United States mounted an incursion into the governorates of Sana'a, Sada, Marib, and Al-Waf, with at least 21 airstrikes. The Pentagon claims to having attacked over 800 targets in Yemen since March 15th this year. Also in Yemen, the country's armed forces declared that they will continue the offensive operations against Israel airports as part of their comprehensive blockade against the country. According to statements by military spokesman Yahya Saree, the Yemeni army will work to enforce the blockade with multiple attacks on Israeli airports, especially Ben Gurion Airport.
In response to the Israeli escalation and the decision to expand its aggressive operations on Gaza, the Yemeni armed forces announced that they will impose a full aerial blockade on the Israeli enemy by repeatedly targeting airports. Foremost among them Lod Airport, known by the Israelis as Ben Gurion Airport. All international airlines are urged to take this statement seriously from the moment of its release and publication, and to cancel all flights to the airports of the criminal enemy in order to ensure the safety of their aircraft and passengers.
In other news in Syria, an attack on a nightclub in Damascus killed one person and injured others, the second such incident in the past 24 hours. According to local media, a group of armed extremists opened fire inside the Karwan club near the central square of Al-Hijaz. The event comes almost a day after a similar one at the club Night of the East in Al-Muhafsa Square, where the attackers beat and chased the men and women out of the place. Since the fall of the government of Bashar al-Assad, the number of extremist actions against religious minorities, alcohol shops, and bars has increased significantly. Vietnam's National Assembly has prepared for a 37-day session to address key decisions for the country's future. Secretary General Le Quang Tung announced that the Parliament would debate and vote on 3 constitutional resolutions, 51 draft laws, and 14 thematic blocks related to socio-economic issues, the state budget, and government supervision. One of the main affairs would be the vote on the resolution on the merger of provincial administrative units and the creation of the National Electoral Council. A nationwide popular consultation on the constitutional reform would also be held between May 6th and June 5th in order to involve citizens in this crucial process for the future of the country. Since 1994, the Cuban Romerías de Mayo have convened the World Festival of Artistic Youth, which brings together in Holguín the best creators and artists from the island and other countries to celebrate Cuban culture in all its manifestations. Our colleague Jordani Rodriguez tells us all about it.
Every May, when spring arrives, in eastern Cuba, Holguín becomes the capital of young art. The May pilgrimage, or Romerías de Mayo in Spanish, in its 32nd edition, are dedicated to cultural industry in favor of brotherhood and solidarity among nations.
It has been really incredible. I hadn't had the opportunity to participate before, but it was really wonderful.
I haven't seen something so big culturally. It is a whole week. I hope it never sleeps so I don't have to sleep and can enjoy it.
Thus began what has become over time the World Festival of Artistic Youth. From the modern part of the city to the historic center, the national and foreign participants joined the inaugural parade.
We have approximately 30 countries here, invited to the pilgrimages. Some of them are Canada, Mexico, Italy, Venezuela.
With the premise of integrating tradition and modernity in defense of the identity values of our peoples, the Association Hermanos Saiz joins the voices of several parts of the world because, as its motto reaffirms, there is no today without yesterday to continue creating in favor of culture.
Super cool. The Cuban spirit is like that, and we have to show it to the world. All the arts come together, for every taste, every color.
The magnificence of Cuba, where culture is united and becomes one. It is the theme of pilgrimages. I go to the hill in the company of the people as part of the tradition.
From today, this also becomes a space to debate about this war and the constant struggle against the cultural colonization to which they try to subject us. From Holguín, we defend the cultural traditions, the identity of the peoples.
We are here, on Fidel's balcony, where he spoke to this city once, that we would make it possible to defend a dream, to multiply universities, to make a country that not only resists, but that will be able to pass once again all the tests, beyond all the dreams, this enormous island, once again beacon of this continent. I hope that another day many will join us, and the world will be one.
The pilgrims reached the hill of Vallado or Loma de la Cruz. They climbed some 462 steps. It was from this point that Pope Francis blessed the city in 2015 when he visited Cuba. The young artists absorbed the Catholic tradition when a Franciscan friar carried a wooden cross up the hill. For 32 years, the axe of Holguín has been carried on the shoulders of these walkers, and on the last day of the pilgrimage, the same axes traveled through the city on the highest modern point of the city as part of the celebration of joy.
Camarógrafo Eddie de la Pera y Jordanis Rodríguez Laurencio, TeleSUR, Holguín, Cuba.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.